Okay, biology students, today we are focusing on meiosis versus mitosis. This is part 2 of our video series, so let's check it out. Okay, so for the first thing we really want to focus on is kind of our setup, so cell division and reproduction. We got to go through a few things first. Asexual reproduction. So what we're talking about is asexual, okay? So you guys probably have a good idea about this from now, but just as a review. So what you're producing is genetically identical, okay? So like that there, from a single parent. So we don't have the two that we normally think of in sexual reproduction. So we are still forming a new individual. It just is genetically the same as the original, okay? So then we go to sexual reproduction. So the main difference here is that we have two separate parent cells, okay? So the main concept here is inheritance of genetic information from each parent. So this is going to change the game as far as adding in a little more diversity instead of before where you're pretty much just cloning, okay? And these parent cells are special reproductive cells called our sperm and our egg, as we just went over in reproduction. So, mitosis, what is actually happening? What's produced? Well, a product would be two daughter cells, which are absolutely identical to the parent cell. So this would be following along the lines of asexual reproduction. So these body cells would be considered diploid, which means they are two complete sets of our chromosomes. And if we're talking numbers here, we're talking about n equals 23, so 2n would be 46. And this is asexual, of course, like we said. So we have our first cell. What we get out is exactly the same. We have two cells produced from mitosis, which will be important to remember later when we talk about meiosis. Okay, so what we have here is picture the cell cycle. Okay, so we have a little bit more than just mitosis. So we need to start somewhere. Okay, so we have what's called G1, S, and G2. The cell, before it can do anything at all, it has to go through some growth and development before it's ready to take that next step onto mitosis. So what we have are two growth phases, so G1, G2, and in between is probably the most important part, and this is actually where the DNA is synthesized. Because if the DNA is not synthesized, then we really have no genetic information. So that's probably the most important step there. And of course, once we get through those stages, the cell is absolutely ready, is primed, ready to go. So then we would actually enter mitosis, which is our focus here. Okay, so when we start out, to give a little wording to Interphase here, so this is the longest part of the cell cycle. The funny thing is, mitosis, although we focus on it as far as the many parts, is actually the longest part of this whole process. So in here, the cells grow, develop, and carry on all their normal functions, okay? And also, of course, we're copying that genetic information, which clearly sets us up for our cell division. So we have mitosis, nuclear division, and cytokinesis eventually, which the cells are cloned, but then they also have to be broken off. So cytokinesis would be division of the cytoplasm, then you have your two separate cells, which of course is your product. So during interphase, okay, our general setup here, our little foundation. So chromosomes are called chromatin. This is uncoiled. This does not resemble a normal chromosome as we would see it. So chromatin is thin, very long fibers, and they are not visible during this phase. So if we look on over here, we do not see any chromosomes yet. So they are condensed within the nucleus, okay, kind of spread out in thread-like fibers, as we can probably see over here. Okay, so a little bit different. So we're kind of, again, at the foundation, just to start. So here's our anatomy of the chromosome. So the chromatin eventually does have to condense, then it will form what we actually see as our chromosome. So here's our chromosome, whole structure, and we can divide it up into a couple different parts. So first, over here, okay, A, here we'll be showing the chromatid, okay, and two of those together would be our sister chromatids. So it takes two, and they are identical to each other, so they are sort of called sister chromatids. Then uniting them in the center here is the centromere. and uniting the sister chromatids together. Okay, so mitosis, why? So these are new body cells, okay, produced for growth and replacing damaged or old cells. So if we think about what the body goes through day to day, okay, cells are either worn out, they can be destroyed by the physical environment, so we're going to need to replace them. And mitosis is absolutely necessary for that to happen. If we don't replace our cells, we lose all the ones we got, then we are, of course, would not be in a good situation. So where is this actually happening? Well, mitosis occurs in only body cells. This is not, again, not the same as meiosis, so we're only in the body here. Okay, so not in gamete or egg or sperm cells. That is different. So again, as a review, so diploid would be 2n. This is a number of body cells, okay, number of chromosomes in body cells. So again, 2n equals 46. And then haploid, a little bit different. This would be a number of chromosomes in our sex cells, okay, which we are getting to eventually. So n would be 23. Okay, so just kind of diagramming the process here. So we start with a parent cell. We have to go through things like interphase, synthesize the necessary DNA, and then chromatin, which we eventually become our chromosomes. So chromosomes are copied and double in number. They will eventually go through the process. They will split, and then we result in 2 daughter cells, remember, identical to the original. Excuse me. Okay, so stages. We can break it down into a simple acronym here called PMAT. So we start out, first phase after interphase is prophase. Then we go to metaphase, anaphase, and telophase finally. So that is your PMAT. Okay, so what we start out with, like we talked about in interphase, DNA, the central concept here, DNA is replicated, and also the cell is preparing. And then, once it's done doing that, it's going to have to start, some things are going to start happening. So as that chromatin condenses, the cell starts readying. Some of the centrioles will start moving to opposite poles. The cell is readying itself to divide eventually. So in prophase, the first phase, chromatin condenses and making the chromosomes visible. Now we can actually see them. So we go through, nuclear envelope breaks down. This is where the genetic information was contained. And then we go to metaphase. So we can see a whole change has happened here. Our centrioles move to opposite poles. Now we can kind of see a half and half nature to the cell. The chromosomes are lining up in the middle. Okay, they're situating themselves to be pulled apart. Okay, they're aligned at the equatorial plane. Okay, then we move over to anaphase. So the sister chromatids, okay, the 2 halves, are going to separate, and they result in daughter chromosomes in each pole of the cell. In telophase, they finally reach where they're trying to go, resulting in the cell, 2 cells being distinct from each other almost, and what happens in between here is cytokinesis. We're actually breaking them apart, and we have our product, our 2 resultant daughter cells. So meiosis is a process by which the number of chromosomes in the gamete is reduced. So basically when fertilization occurs, normal chromosome number is restored to the original. Okay, this is very necessary. So to be reduced, you have to go through 2 stages. Okay, so you have to go through meiosis 1 and meiosis 2. So kind of diagramming out what we were talking about. So we type of cell we have is body cell. Okay, for mitosis, they're called somatic body cells. Of course, the process is that, and we have diploid, and it is 2n. So in meiosis, however, we have the sperm and the egg, different than our body cells, called a gamete, formed by meiosis, and they are haploid, or half the number, eventually, when we finish. So chromosomes occur in pairs. We have some different structures here that we have to talk about because we go through 2 divisions. Okay, so chromosomes are going to occur in similar pairs called homologous chromosomes. 1 chromosome is donated from each parent, okay, so from the sperm and the egg, respectively. So both chromosomes of the pair control the same genetic traits. So with this, we remember back to genetics, we're getting 2 alleles, okay, in total, 1 from each parent for a specified trait. And then when we divide them, we'll only get 1 from the parent, each parent in the resultant cell.